The chamber was built to intimidate. It was called the Great Hall of Conquests, and it did not lie. The vaulted ceiling, so high that the upper reaches were lost in engineered shadow, was supported by pillars carved into the likenesses of subjugated species, their stone faces frozen in eternal despair. The floor was a mosaic of polished obsidian, inlaid with the star charts of 1,000 conquered worlds. And upon the throne of scars, forged from the melted hulls of enemy flagships, sat Imperator Varlak of the Cathar. The Cathar were not merely conquerors, they were perfection. A species that had millennia ago seized control of its own evolution. They were giants of chiseled obsidian flesh, possessing redundant organ systems, diamond-hard claws, and minds that processed battlefield data with the cold efficiency of a supercomputer. They had purged themselves of genetic flaws, of emotional volatility, of the messy chaos of natural selection. They were the galaxy's foregone conclusion, and they had just finished a century-long campaign to pacify their galactic quadrant. All but one irritatingly persistent species. Humanity. The Cathar couldn't understand them. By every metric, humans should have been a footnote. Fragile, short-lived, genetically anarchic. Their ships were crude, their weapons were loud, their tactics were bafflingly reckless. Yet they persisted. They didn't win, not in the grand, strategic sense the Cathar understood. But they didn't lose. They bent, they broke, they scattered, and then they would reappear somewhere else with a new, infuriating innovation born of desperation. And so Varlak had done something unprecedented. He had not sent a fleet, he had not deployed a legion, he had sent a request, a summons. He wanted to understand the flaw in his logic, and he had summoned the one being his intelligence suggested could explain it, a human archivist. Her name was Elara Vance. When she entered the great hall, a ripple of contemptuous amusement passed through the assembled Cathar primes. She was so small. Her skin was soft, her movements gracile but lacking the coiled lethality of a true predator. She wore simple gray robes, her only tool a small data slate clutched in her hands. She looked less like a representative of a galactic power and more like a lost specimen. She walked the long, star-flecked path to the foot of the throne, the silence broken only by the whisper of her robes on the obsidian. She did not bow. She simply stopped and looked up at the mountain of perfected flesh that was Imperator Varlak. "You wish to see me, Imperator," she said, her voice calm, clear, and utterly devoid of the fear he expected. Varlak's voice was the grinding of tectonic plates. "We have studied your species, Archivist Vance. Our bioscholars have sequenced your genome. Our strategists have analyzed your military history. Our sociologists have mapped your chaotic societies. The conclusion is inescapable." He leaned forward, his massive head blotting out the light from the nebula globes above. "You are a mistake, a biological dead end. A species that wages war against its own planet, against its own kin, against its own nature. You are defined by your weakness, and yet you endure. Explain this discrepancy." Elara Vance looked around the hall, at the stoic, 7-foot-tall warriors, at the monuments to their power, at the arrogant certainty in their golden eyes. Then she looked back at Varlak. She smiled, a small, knowing, and terribly dangerous smile. "Imperator," she began, her voice now amplified by the hall's acoustics, reaching every corner, every shadowed alcove. "You are not the first to make this assumption. In fact, you are correct in your analysis. Our weakness is the single most defining trait of our species." The Cathar primes shifted, a low rumble of agreement in their chests. "Your data is flawless," Elara continued, her voice gaining strength. "But your conclusion is the single greatest strategic error a species has ever made. You have mistaken the catalyst for the flaw. You have looked at the chisel and seen only the hammer's scar. You asked me to explain the discrepancy. I will do better. I will give you the lecture that your bio scholars were too proud to write. I will show you the truth you have failed to grasp. And by the time I am done, you will understand why the weakness of humanity is the very thing that will one day see us standing on the ruins of empires like yours. And in the cold silence of that monument to conquest, the Archivist began the lecture that would echo through the Cathar Empire for the next 1,000 years. The lecture that would, against all logic and reason, make a warrior empire weep. Let us begin with the most obvious of your observations, Elara said, her gaze sweeping across the powerful figures arrayed before her. Our physical fragility, you are correct. We have no natural armor. Our skin tears with insulting ease. Our bones snap. We have no claws, no fangs, no innate venom. Placed on a primordial death world alongside one of your Cathar younglings, a human child would perish in moments. This is a fact. It is the first entry in the human story. She paused, letting the statement hang in the air. Your species, Imperator, was blessed by your world. It made you strong. It forged you into living weapons. Your evolution was a straight line from apex predator to galactic sovereign. You were given every advantage. And that is your foundational, unrepayable debt. You never had to think your way out of being prey. A low murmur, this time of confusion, went through the assembled primes. Humanity was not blessed, Elara's voice sharpened. We were cursed. Our homeworld Earth was a paradise compared to your crucible, but it was filled with things faster, stronger, and more lethal than us. We were soft bodies in a hard world. We could not outfight the cave bear, so we had to outthink it. We couldn't outrun the saber-tooth, so we had to outplan it. Our lack of claws did not make us helpless. It made us invent the spear. Our lack of armor did not make us victims. It made us master fire, build shelters, and form communities for mutual defense. Every single piece of your superior biology was a gift. Every single piece of our technology, from the first sharpened stone to the starships you find so crude, was earned. It was wrested from the universe by a mind forged in the furnace of absolute necessity. She tapped her data slate, and a holographic image shimmered into existence above her. It was a Cathar warrior in full battle armor, sleek, powerful, integrated. Your armor is an extension of your already formidable biology, she stated. It enhances what is already there. It is predictable. A stronger metal, a more efficient shield generator, linear improvement. The image changed. It now showed a human soldier, but not one, a dozen, a construction worker in a powered exoskeleton lifting a massive girder, a deep-sea welder in an atmospheric diving suit withstanding pressures that would crush a Cathar vessel, a zero-G miner flitting through an asteroid field with a grace no land-based creature could ever learn, a biohazard containment specialist handling viruses that would unravel your perfect DNA in seconds. Our technology, Elara said, her voice ringing with passion, is not an extension of us. It is a transformation. We are not bound to a single form. We build our strength. We construct our resilience. We design our adaptations. You look at one of us and see a fragile biped. You fail to see the 10,000 different forms we can inhabit, each one custom-built for a task you could never even conceive. You perfected your bodies. We, in our weakness, were forced to perfect the art of making our environment, our tools, and our intellect our bodies. You are a single, perfected blade. We are a tide of ever-changing liquid metal, able to become the hammer, the shield, the key, or the scalpel as necessity dictates. Your strength is a wall. Our weakness is a doorway to infinite potential. The hall was utterly silent now. The contempt was gone, replaced by a focused, unnerving stillness. This leads to your second observation, Elara continued, swiping the hologram away. Our insultingly short lifespans, you live for millennia, you watch stars be born and die. We are a flicker, a breath, A momentary spark in the darkness. Again, your data is correct. Imperator Varlak shifted on his throne. A short life breeds desperation, hasty decisions, a lack of long-term vision. It is a flaw. Is it? Elara shot back, her voice sharp as glass. Imperator, what was the last great innovation your species produced? I have studied your archives, your core technology, your drive systems, your weapons, your genetic code was perfected 9,000 years ago. Since then you have only refined, you have polished, you have stagnated. Why? Because you have no urgency. A Cathar warrior has 1,000 years to achieve glory. A Cathar scientist has 1,000 years to prove a theory. A Cathar Imperator has 1,000 years to implement a plan. Your long lives have made you complacent. We are not complacent, we are patient, Varlak growled. You call it patience. I call it inertia, Elara countered, taking a bold step forward. A human has, if they are lucky, 1 century. That century is a fire. It burns brightly and it burns fast. We have no time for complacency. A human scientist knows they will not live to see the fruits of a 1,000-year experiment, so they must find a shortcut. They must innovate, collaborate, take insane risks. They must build on the work of those who came before and leave a foundation for those who come after. Our mortality is the engine of our progress. She raised her hand, palm open. Every generation of humans is a new experiment. We are born, we learn from the collected knowledge of our parents, and then we challenge it. We tear it down. We say, this is not good enough. We can do better. We are in a constant state of renewal, of revolution. You, Imperator, have likely commanded your legions for longer than my entire civilization has had interstellar travel. You have fought with the same tactics, the same doctrines, because they have always worked. But what happens when you face an enemy that changes its entire military doctrine every 50 years? An enemy whose ship designs are considered obsolete in 20. An enemy whose young commanders are taught to see your timeless strategies as predictable fossils. Your short lifespans create chaos, division. Your own history is a testament to this. You fight yourselves more than any external foe. Yes, Elara's voice boomed. Yes, we do, and every internal conflict, every war, every ideological struggle is a forge. While you were basking in the sterile peace of genetic uniformity, we were wrestling with 1 billion different ideas. We were fighting over philosophies, religions, economic systems, and scientific theories. It was messy. It was brutal. It was wasteful. And it was the greatest intellectual boot camp in the galaxy. We have explored every possible mode of thinking, from the most collectivist hive mind to the most radical individualism. We have tested every form of governance. We have debated every ethical question. This chaos you so disdain is our crucible. It has prepared us for any ideological or psychological challenge the universe can throw at us. You have one way of thinking. We have 1 million. Which of us, I ask you, is truly prepared for the unknown? The silence in the hall was now heavy, thick with dawning comprehension. The primes were not looking at a specimen anymore. They were looking at a philosopher warrior, cloaked in the robes of a scholar. And this brings me to the heart of your misunderstanding, Elara said, her voice dropping to an intense, almost conspiratorial level. The part your bio-scholars saw but could not comprehend, our genetics, our DNA. She gestured to the air, and a new hologram appeared. A double helix, but not the clean, elegant model of Cathar perfection. This one was a mess. It was cluttered with vast stretches of what was once called junk DNA. It was riddled with latent retroviruses, with chaotic mutations, with ancient, dormant genes from 1 million evolutionary dead ends. You looked at this and you saw a failure, a genetic garbage heap, a blueprint drafted by a blind, mad god. You saw inefficiency, randomness, weakness. Elara looked up at Varlak. We looked at it and we saw our salvation. We call it the spark within. Every Cathar is a near-identical copy of a perfected template. You are magnificent, and you are predictable. A virus designed to attack one of you will attack all of you. A psychological weapon that breaks one of your primes will break them all. You are a monoculture, and monocultures, Imperator, are tragically fragile. They thrive in stable conditions, but they shatter at the first sign of a novel blight. Our chaos is our shield. Our genetic diversity is so vast that no two humans are alike. A plague that wipes out one colony may be completely ineffective against another. A frequency that drives one soldier mad will be ignored by the soldier next to him. You cannot design a single weapon to defeat us because there is no single us to defeat. We are a legion of individuals, bound not by a shared genome but by a shared idea. She pointed to a section of the holographic DNA, a stretch labeled dormant markers. And this is our hidden arsenal. Your bioscholars dismiss this as junk. It is anything but. It is the ghost of our evolution. Within this code are the genes for surviving ice ages, for processing toxins from forgotten predators, for enduring radiation levels that would sterilize a Cathar world. Most lie dormant, but humanity has a secret Imperator. A secret we are only just beginning to understand ourselves. When we are pushed to the absolute brink, when a colony is on the verge of extinction, when a generation faces a challenge that our technology and our intellect cannot overcome, something happens. The spark ignites. The junka activates. The genetic ghosts wake up. Her voice was a whisper that filled the vast hall. You have records, I know you do. Colony ship UNS Helios crashed on Cygnus X1's death world, Ragnarok, radiation, toxic atmosphere, monstrous fauna. Your probes declared all 10,000 colonists dead within a year. You moved on. A century later, one of our survey ships passed by. They found survivors, third generation. They weren't quite human anymore. Their skin had a metallic sheen to block the radiation. Their lungs could filter the air. They were faster, stronger, with heightened senses. Their latent DNA, under the pressure of extinction, had rewritten them. We didn't even need genetic engineering. Our DNA engineered itself. She swiped the slate, another case file. The farming outpost of new series, a genetically engineered blight designed by a rival species, was released. It should have destroyed the ecosystem, starved them all. It did, for a time. Then the children of the survivors started being born with immune systems that could not only neutralize the blight but metabolize it. They turned your poison into their food. The spark Imperator. The potential for unexpected evolution, encoded into our very being as a final, desperate defense. You are a finished product, a beautiful, polished, perfect statue. But a statue cannot change. A statue can only be broken. We are not a statue. We are a river of raw, chaotic potential. We can be damned, we can be diverted, but we will always, always find a new path. And we are always changing. The human you fight today is not the human you will fight tomorrow. Elara Vance took a deep breath, steeling herself for her final point. Which brings us to the last and most dangerous of our perceived weaknesses, our emotions. The Cathar primes straightened. This, to them, was the ultimate human flaw: rage, fear, grief, love. To the Cathar, these were mental illnesses, purged from their genome for the sake of clarity and focus. You see our emotions as a liability, Elara said. And in many ways they are. They make us irrational. They drive us to acts of folly. They cause pain. But you have failed, utterly failed, to understand what they truly are. They are not a weakness. They are the most potent fuel in the known universe. A Cathar warrior fights for glory, for the expansion of the empire, for the perfection of your species. These are grand, abstract concepts. They are cold. A human will fight for love. They will throw themselves into the mouth of a plasma cannon for a person they care for. It is not logical, it is not rational, and you cannot ever account for it in your strategic simulations. A Cathar warrior who sees their squad destroyed will make a tactical retreat to preserve their own life for the good of the Empire. That is your doctrine. A human soldier who sees their squad mate, their brother, fall will not retreat. They will be consumed by a rage so absolute, so incandescent, that they will do things your logic cannot compute. They will charge a fortified position with nothing but a knife. They will rig their own fusion core to overload. They will trade their life for the mere chance of avenging a fallen friend. This is not a flaw in their programming. This is the very core of it. Her voice dropped, becoming heavy with sorrow. And grief, you have no concept of it. To you, a casualty is a debit in a ledger, a resource to be replaced. You do not weep, you do not mourn, you cannot understand the power that comes from loss. She brought up one final hologram. It was not a chart or a diagram. It was a video file. The resolution was poor, taken from a helmet cam. The audio was filled with static and panicked breathing. It showed the defense of a small human research outpost on the edge of Cathar space, a place called Hadley's Hope. The Cathar had not attacked it directly. They had, as a test, unleashed a bioform from a conquered world, a mindless, chittering horror of claws and acid designed for terror and slaughter. Cathar doctrine against such a creature was to evacuate and bombard from orbit. It was not a foe to be fought, but an infestation to be cleansed. The footage showed the bioforms swarming the corridors. It showed human marines, hopelessly outnumbered, being torn apart. But they didn't break. They fought for every inch of ground. And then the camera focused on the outpost civilian commander, a middle-aged man in a torn shirt, his face smeared with grime and tears. He was holding a small, bloody teddy bear. "They got my daughter," the man's voice choked out over the comms, a sound of such profound agony that it seemed to physically press down on the air in the great hall. "They took my little girl." What happened next was not strategy. It was not tactics. The man, armed with nothing but a jury-rigged mining charge, walked into the heart of the alien nest. He didn't scream. He didn't shout. He just walked, his face a mask of terrible, empty calm. The Cathar observers, watching from a cloaked vessel, had logged it as irrational suicide. But Elara Vance provided the context. His grief had not broken him. It had refined him. It had burned away everything else, his fear, his self-preservation, his very identity, until only one thing remained, a purpose. He detonated the charge, collapsing the nest and burying the alien queen under a mountain of rock, buying the few remaining survivors the moments they needed to escape. He hadn't saved himself. He hadn't won the battle. He had simply refused to let the thing that took his daughter continue to exist. "Your warriors fight for victory," Elara said softly, as the hologram faded, leaving the silent image of the teddy bear in the minds of all present. "That man fought for a memory. He fought for a ghost. Tell me, Imperator, which of those is a stronger motivator? Which of those can you ever hope to defeat?" She turned her gaze from the throne and looked at the assembled primes. And for the first time, she saw something other than arrogance in their golden eyes. She saw doubt. She saw confusion. She saw a glimmer of a terrifying, alien emotion they could not name, but that humans would have called awe. And then it happened. It started with a single prime, a veteran of 100 campaigns, a giant of a warrior whose face was a roadmap of scars. A single crystalline tear traced a path down his obsidian cheek. It was not a tear of sadness, it was a tear of revelation. The shattering of a fundamental truth that had defined his entire existence. He was not weeping for the human. He was weeping for himself, for his species, for their profound, millennium-long blindness. Another prime followed, then another. These were not sobs of grief. They were the quiet, shuddering tears of a consciousness that has just been forcibly expanded, a mind cracking under the strain of a new and terrible understanding. They had looked at humanity and seen a flawed, weak, contemptible thing. And this small, fragile archivist had held up a mirror and shown them that what they were seeing was the reflection of their own fatal ignorance. They had mistaken the seed for a pebble, unable to see the forest it would one day become. Imperator Varlak did not weep, but he sat motionless on his throne of scars, his massive hands gripping the arms so tightly that the melted metal groaned in protest. He stared at Elara Vance, and in his eyes, for the first time in 10,000 years, was something other than absolute certainty. There was respect, and there was fear. Elara Vance lowered her data slate. Her work was done. "You have built an empire on the assumption of your own genetic superiority," she said, her voice a final, damning verdict. "You believe you are the endpoint of evolution. That is a fatal assumption. We are not an endpoint. We are a beginning. We are messy. We are chaotic. We are weak. And our weakness is the anvil upon which we forge our strength. We carry within us the spark within, the ghost of every struggle, the seed of every possible future. We adapt. We overcome. We endure. Now you have the data you requested, Imperator. The discrepancy is explained. The only question that remains is, what will you do with it?" She turned and without another word walked the long path back through the great hall of conquests. This time no one saw a specimen. They saw a prophet. They saw the harbinger of a power they could never hope to contain, because it was a power born from the one thing they had purged from themselves. The glorious, terrible, and unstoppable imperfection of being truly, deeply, and chaotically alive. The silence held long after she was gone. Then Imperator Varlak rose from his throne. His voice, when he spoke, was not the grinding of tectonic plates. It was the low, dangerous rumble of a coming storm. "Send the order," he commanded, his voice echoing in the now hallowed hall. "To every fleet, every legion, every listening post. Rescind all standing doctrines regarding the Terrans. All our assumptions are void. All our strategies are obsolete." He looked out at the star charts on the floor, at the 1,000 worlds he had conquered, and for the first time they seemed small, insignificant. "Our greatest mistake was not underestimating their strength," he said to his weeping primes and to the ghosts in the hall. "It was misunderstanding the very nature of it. Study them, learn from them, but do not under any circumstances push them to the brink, for we now know what lies there, not an end but a beginning." And in that moment, the most powerful warrior empire in the galaxy finally understood that their long, placid age of perfection was over, and a new age of terrifying, beautiful chaos was about to begin.